This next video is going to be the part 2 to the part 1 that was done before with the collectible plane. This plane is not collectible, it's a user. It's a Miller's Falls 14. It's actually a 14A. This is brass, which is great because we'll be able to demonstrate how to clean brass with the toothpaste and whatnot. So I'm actually going to start the video off with that so you can see that process, and we'll put those off to the side. So quickly getting into it, I'm just going to take the plane apart. I'll do it on camera quickly and put the parts in the bin that are going to go over and get washed and cleaned up. We won't be getting into that as much as last time, except for 1 or 2 extra steps. So first things first, take all your parts apart. If you see here, this is actually brass in here. Now, this is stuck, so I'm going to leave it stuck. I'm just going to clean what's up here and the top. Because again, it's a user plane, not a collector plane, not a big deal. You don't get as super concerned about a user plane as you would a collector plane. And you'll see here, there is some nickel missing on this cap right here. There's a little nickel missing here as well. It doesn't really matter. The iron, as you can see here, it's kind of crusty, it's rusty, there is a little pitting on there, I can feel it on the surface. The cutting edge down here looks like it probably is okay. Hopefully it's the same on the back, because when I go to sharpen it, we're going to want it to be somewhat clear, because when you have pitting on the back of the iron, you got to keep going down until you get the pitting gone, so you can get an infinity edge. So, same thing here, kind of rusty. So I go ahead and take that apart. Ignore Facebook Messenger in my pocket. I should have put my phone on mute, but I didn't do that. Hey, look, there's a spider nest inside of the frog. Hopefully none of its little friends are still there. If not, they'll get washed out too. This plane is literally in as-found condition. It's gross. It's really, really gross. And again, our first parts we're going to clean here is going to be the brass parts. And all we're doing is we're cleaning these up just to make them look nice. They don't have to be super shiny, but make them look nice. They're going to go on a bench, right? So, and again, you'll see a lot of, one of the things you'll see a lot of differences between a collectible plane and this user plane as far as how much attention to detail I go to. There's a lot of things that I wouldn't do to a collector plane that I'm going to do to this plane. Beautiful sound there, huh? This is also locked in place. So, as you can see, this plane is absolutely filthy. It's disgusting. And if you look at it, a lot of guys would look at this and say, oh, wow, that's gross. I got to dip that in vinegar to clean that up because, you know, there's rust on there. There's rust on here. Absolutely. Surface rust. If there's a little bit of pitting on this plane, it does not matter whatsoever. It is a user plane. You don't need to dip this in vinegar to get rid of the rust. I'll show you in a few minutes how I get rid of the rust beyond what I would normally do as far as scraping it down. Same thing here, it's rusty. Same thing here, rusty. Who cares? User plane. All right, moving on, move forward. We're going to go over to the brass. The brass that's here, I'll throw a couple paper towels down. Does get kind of messy. You can do this part dry. It's easier to do it when it's a little damp. It dries fine as well. As you can see, the brass is black. It looks almost like steel from a distance. And a lot of guys, they'll look at these planes and say, oh, those are steel adjusters. They're not steel. It's brass. You can tell inside of here, you'll see a little bit of that yellowy. That's definitely brass. So I'm going to take a little bit of this toothpaste, squirt it out on the paper towel. Now, the thing about toothpaste is abrasive. It's not very abrasive, but it's definitely abrasive. You take a little bit, put it on the toothbrush, right? And just scrub over the brass that's here. If it's too bad and this isn't working, which this actually looks like it might need to be cleaned further in the sink, the brass would typically brighten up pretty quick here. And again, it's not super, super abrasive. Yeah, in this case, I'm going to have to shoot on over to the sink and at least clean off the crud that's off of here first. We'll come back to it in just a second. Okay, so we're coming back over here. Apparently somebody had at some point dipped this in some kind of chemicals, and it wasn't even scrubbing off at the sink with detergent. So we ended up pulling out a gray Scotch-Brite. And again, this is really for looks more than anything else. You take the gray Scotch-Brite and just basically go with the direction of the mill marks on here just to make it look decent. And that's pretty much it, right? Wipe it off. That's pretty decent. Same thing with these guys. I just kind of did them over at the sink like this. And basically, you're just doing the same thing, just kind of turning it with the direction of the way it was turned on the lathe. Same thing there, all right? Set that down. Same thing here. Now again, I already cleaned these at the sink with the wire brush. That's what it required to get down in the grooves and everything. This thing was these were in pretty bad shape. I mean, worse than usual, really. All right, so now just take your toothbrush, toothpaste. I'm actually using a little bit of water this time, make it a little easier. Just kind of pull a stroke over it. Just kind of clean it up, brighten it up, just a touch. That's it. That's all. Normally, you could do this without going through and abrading it, but in this case, unfortunately, that was not the case. So, and that's normally where your toothpaste comes in. I'm just going to clean this off for now. It's a nice dull finish, which will turn dark again relatively quickly, and that'll get rinsed. Actually, I can do a little bit of rinsing here. That'll get rinsed a little bit later on in the sink when I go back over to clean everything. And just to rinse it off and dry it off real good. I did already get the post, like I showed you in the other video. You need to make sure the post is well cleaned, the threads are cleaned, and it's nice and dry, so that it doesn't stick in your plane later on. So that's that piece there. This one's already in pretty good shape. Don't need to mess with it too much more. This one could probably stand to be cleaned up a little bit. Even out some of the scratches that are created by the gray Scotch-Brite. And again, I'm not trying to polish this up. I'm just trying to clean it. That's it. Just trying to clean it, make it a little bit more attractive. Again, it's a user, and it is nice to have a nice, attractive user in the shop. It's not required for use. It's not going to make the plane work better. It looks a little nicer. That's all. All right, so that's pretty simple there. I'll rinse the rest of that out when I go over to the sink to clean the body of the plane. I'm basically, when it comes to this part of the plane, this part right here, when I go to clean this, I'm not going to do that on the video this time around because there's only one additional step that I'm going to take beyond just cleaning it like I did the Type 2. It's going to be typical procedures, you know, soap it, clean it all out, dry it real well, scrape the cheek, scrape the sole, scrape the other cheek with a razor blade, just to kind of knock the high spots down and get it to where you can move on to the next step. Same thing with the iron, same thing with the chip breaker, right? The difference is we're going to be tuning the chip breaker. So it's not going to be factory anymore. We're going to be tuning the edges of the iron. That's not going to be factory anymore. You know, it's a different procedure in that respect, but we can do it here at the bench. You guys can see it. So give me a few minutes. I'll get all this stuff cleaned up. I'll be right back to you, and we'll go to the next step. All right, we're back. The process cleaning at the sink was a really arduous one. This thing was really rusty. These parts, I did have to hit very softly with a really soft wire wheel just to knock the rust off the surface. They were pretty bad, which it's okay to do. It's a user plane. It's not a collectible plane. The idea is just to kind of get them clean so you can get some oil on them and protect them because, again, you're using it. Your oils from your hands, your sweat, that kind of stuff's going to rest on the plane, so you want to make sure that all that rusts off of there. So, all right, so we're going to go straight from the cleaning process, all that stuff, we're going to go straight into the tuning process because can't put the plane back together until it's been tuned. At the very end, we'll clean up this thing, make it look a little bit better, but for the most part, it's good to go. All right, so, all right, first things first. Now, if any of you guys out there have seen Paul Sellers' videos, I actually got this cue off of Paul. It's a beautiful idea and it works really good. So going back here, just take this guy. I don't do it as much as he does. I just go across the edges just to kind of clean it up a little bit. Soften the edges so that they're not sharp. Same thing across here. This is where your hand can make contact with the iron, and it can actually nick you in use. Just kind of go over it a little bit, smooth, soft. You don't need to go that far with it. You just gotta kind of go over it, just enough to kind of ease those edges. It's nice and soft there. You pay special attention to the back of the iron because your hand can come in contact with this upper ear of the iron. Just kind of go over that real well. Just again, feel it for smooth. And all this is, guys, it's just an India stone, a skinny, coarse, or I'm sorry, coarse, a skinny, fine India stone. That's it. All right, that's all good to go. There's a little bit right there I can feel. I'll go ahead and go over that a little bit more. All right, that's good. All right, nice and soft. Next, same thing on this. Just real easy. Go over the edges, nice and softly. Just kind of clean them up a little bit. And actually, Miller's Falls already eased the top of this. Probably during the stamping process, it folds the steel over a little bit because these are stamped parts. Anytime you grab one of these chip breakers, they're always stamped out. Stamped and then formed. Again, just soften the edges. The backside I'm not too worried about. It's going to be up against the iron. So there's no point in beating a dead horse on that one. All right. On this edge here, this is the one flaw on Miller's Falls. And everybody knows I'm a big Miller's Falls fan. I love their planes. They're great user planes. But this is their Achilles heel. And it's actually deep enough. I'm going to take a file to it. This front edge right here should be polished. It should be smooth as butter. Very smooth. So that when the chip comes into it, it pushes up and away. All right, so when you're coming in with the chip, I should use this. When you're coming in with the chip, it should hit that edge and then roll back out. If this is blunted, like it is on a Miller's Falls typically, it's just going to hit it. It's going to compress the shaving, shove it right back into the mouth. You'll get two problems with that. You won't get a nice smooth cut underneath of the plane, and you'll also end up with a clogged mouth, which is a major pain in the butt. Anybody who's used a lot of planes, it's a pain. So now, before I do any of the tuning to the bottom of this chip breaker, I'm going to go ahead and clean this top edge up. Now, there's two ways to do it. I usually do both ways to get it done. I'm going to take this file. I'm going to run across the face here. I'm looking for flats, right? And I'm going to go across the face real soft, real gentle, rolling it back and forth. I'm trying to find a way where you guys can see what I'm doing. So just kind of go back and forth a little bit. Roll it as you go, just to kind of round it out, right? And keep going. You want it nice and even across there, so it gives full even support to the chip. Again, rolling back. Now there will be one part of this process you will not see on film. I will use a jeweler's wheel on this with some green oxide at the very end to polish out the edge of the chip breaker. It's optional. It's something I like to do when I'm tuning a plane. You don't have to. It's not particularly necessary. It's just something I like to do. I polish it up so that there's zero friction or resistance with that chip or the shaving that's coming off of there. So now you should be able to see this. It's all exposed metal. And it's been filed, right? Now that file is coarser than this stone. So I'm going to go across it with a stone. And again, just kind of dragging it at an angle there. Smooth it out. Progressive grits, basically. And I can see better this way with the light. So just nice and smooth. And again, I'm working my way back. Round that sucker out. No sharp edges. All right, that's good. If you can see that, that is good. That's ready to move on to the next step for it. So next step involves, I use diamond stones. I love diamond stones. Big fan, big fan. Very, very big fan. Used them for years. They work well. Now I'm going to go to a fine stone. I've got a coarse, a medium, a fine, and an extra fine. And I've had these stones for years. I think they're getting pretty close to needing to be replaced, but they're at least 3 years old. And I probably sharpen 50 to 100 times more irons and do this kind of stuff than a normal person would. So diamond stones are highly recommended. They last a long time. Now, regular water, guys. Just regular water. Run a little bit of water on there. I'm going to take this chip breaker. I'm going to set it right here on the table. Right? Keep it square with the stone and run it back and forth. Just run it back and forth across there. Check the back. You're looking at the landing where it touches the iron. And I actually already got a pattern all the way across the edge there. I don't know if you can see that or not, but right along here, it's flat all the way across there. And it's all the way to the front edge. This has actually got a little bit of a burr on it. You want that burr. So the next thing I'm going to do, and this again, one of the reasons I like Miller's Falls. That's ready to go with very little effort. Now, I'm going to take this, lay it this way. I've got both hands on it. I'm going to drag it back. Take it, drag it back, and actually just knock the burr off. Just keep doing that. You see there's the burr right there. And you'll be able to see the, actually, you know what, let me make it easier for you guys to see. I can see it here, but you probably can't see it on the camera. So we'll put a little bit of Sharpie on there so you can actually see what it's cutting and what it's not. We'll let that sit for a second while it's drying. So while that's drying, let me explain to you what's going on here. So what you want is you want that chip breaker to not have any relief on the back edges of it, because that's an area where chips can come in underneath it. Those chips that come in underneath it will clog up. So by running that across the stone side to side, you're making that entire area flat. And the chip breaker is mated to the iron. It's basically the width of the iron. Some are a little narrower and a little wider, but that allows it to mate flat to that front of the iron. Gives it full support across the iron, and it's also not allowing an area for chips to go up underneath. All right. Again, got the black on there, Sharpie on there. I'm going to make one swipe so you can see where it's contacting and where it's not. And again, this is Miller's Falls Achilles heel. This is typically the biggest problem with these. Sergeants are kind of like that too. I'll make a couple swipes here so you can see where the contact's being made. As you can see here, it's not making contact anywhere in the middle there. Okay? It's not necessary that it does, but it is absolutely necessary that it's clean across the face there. You want the shaving to hit and peel up. You don't want it to hit and twist or hit and couple in the middle. You want it to peel back. If your plane's tuned well and you put that plane to wood and you swipe it across there as fast as you can, that shaving should literally almost throw itself out of the plane. That's a well-tuned plane. If you get it where it curls up in a nice tight ball in the mouth, and they turn the plane upside down and dump it and it falls out and it's a beautiful, beautiful little curly Q, that's great too, especially for a jack plane. So you'll see here, it's not touching on this edge, but it is on this edge. So I go over here, I'll put a little bit more pressure on that corner. Now I got to keep that pressure constant. Now this is a fine stone. If I have to, I can go back to the core stone, if necessary. If I have to take a lot of material off here, I can do that. You can also file it away a little bit to kind of make it a little easier. I like doing it this way. You can see here, we're already making really good progress, right? Very little bit of work. We're making great progress. We're almost in right there in that spot. We're almost in here to go there. You do have a little bit on the edge there. That's going to have to get taken care of as well. You are going to throw a burr to the back. Okay, expect to throw a burr to the back. And that's fine. We'll take care of that burr in just a minute. For right now, you're just trying to get that smooth and even all the way across there. And we are definitely getting there. We're almost where we need to be. We're still here on the edge. I'm not sure if you can see this. But it's touching on the very leading edge, but you can see a little bit of black there. That doesn't necessarily need to go completely away. It's just, it needs to be at that edge for sure. You can go forward and backwards. That's fine too. Pushing and pulling. That is okay. You don't have to just pull. Sometimes I do it one way, sometimes I do it another way. It doesn't really matter. And again, I'm only coming up as far as I need to. You really should aim to be about right there. Somewhere right in this area here. That's where you should aim to have it all nice and smoothed out. But again, the most important part's this leading edge up here. And I can actually feel a burr on some of that. I'm going to go to a little coarser stone to make this a little faster. Not necessary, but it does make it a little quicker. Again, just some water. You can actually hear that cutting more aggressively. It's also going to leave a lot more aggressive scratch pattern you have to remove as well. So you try not to go to the coarser stones if you don't have to. But if you have to, you have to. It is what it is. You don't want to spend 8 hours to tune a chip breaker either. And we're almost there. There's a little bit of black right there. I don't know if you can see that. There is a little bit of black on the very leading edge of that. All right, we are all the way across the face there. Everything's good. We're almost back far enough there. So we're almost ready to rock and roll. Now I'm going to put even pressure across here, like I did at the beginning, just to make sure I'm even. And come across here. All right. I'm now gold. I'm good all the way across there. I'm back far enough for the chip engagement in the very front of the chip breaker. So that's good. We'll move back to the fine stone. We don't really need the coarse stone anymore. The fine stone's good enough at this point. Again, now this time, I'm not going to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It's not necessary. I'm just going to throw a little burr up on the front. So just kind of go back real lightly. That's it. Not putting a lot of pressure. You don't want to put deep scratches in there again. You're going to feel for a burr on the front, which there isn't really a whole lot of a burr there. I'm going to try to put a little bit more of a burr on there. But again, don't press down really hard. You don't need to. Just kind of go across it. You'll see the black forming on top of the diamond, and that's the metal being removed. Keep your fingers even. Now, see, I feel a burr all the way across there now. Keep your fingers even across here when you're going back and forth, or at least press your finger down in the middle. That way it's even pressure across. All right, now I'm going to go to here, just like before, sweep up, stop, sweep up, stop. All you're doing is throwing that burr back over to the other edge. right? Because you're going to make that wire go back and forth till it breaks off. I'm putting progressively less pressure each time I go. That way the scratches aren't as deep as they were prior. It'll make it easier to polish out later on. And by the way, you can polish this out. I use a jeweler's wheel for speed. You can polish this out just with a regular piece of leather and some green oxide in it. That is enough to polish that breaker, right? All right. This should be one hell of a plane when I'm done with it as far as being able to be used. Extra fine. Run this back and forth across here. Nice and light. Don't press down too hard. You want it to almost be shiny on the back. Good and shiny landing all the way across. Same thing across the front now as before. Again, not a ton of pressure, guys. Just a little bit. It's not necessary. You'll hear the cutting sound is just barely there. All right, that is ready to rock and roll. So we'll move on to the iron. I'll take one quick swipe across here. I do feel a burr across the back. Just a really light swipe across the back there to knock that burr off. And this is actually almost sharp enough to cut paper, and that's good. All right, so let's move on to the iron. Okay, we're back. Just went into the shop real quick with the jeweler's wheel and polished this up. So now this is polished and ready to throw on the iron. So now we're going to focus our attention on the iron itself. On the later Miller's Falls irons, they're usually pretty bad. There's usually a lot of work that needs to be done on them. So I'll take a little bit of permanent marker. Permanent marker is your friend, by the way. Take a little bit of permanent marker, go across the bottom of the iron here on the back side, the flat. That kind of air that off a little bit. That's the problem with doing this kind of stuff. You're constantly waiting for permanent marker or bluing or something to dry. It's kind of a pain in the tush, but it is what it is. All right, that's pretty dry. And actually, let me see if I can get close here into the camera. I'm not sure if you can see that or not. You can see that there's a grain pattern to the iron. That grain is going to be the first thing that's got to get cut off, the crests of that grain. This iron's never been flattened. So that's going to be a little bit of a task for us. All right, going in order with the grits here. You start with the coarsest grit. Put a little bit of water on there. Let's see how bad the back of this iron is. Slide it across. A couple of strokes. We're hoping that if anything, this is a little concave. We do not want convex. Convex is a pain in the rear end to clean up. And we are concave. You can see here, the edges are what's getting hit. But that's a pretty big issue there in the middle. We're just going to have to keep grinding to get down below that. And this iron has been chipped at some point in the past. So that's going to be somewhat of a pain in the rear end to get out of there. We're getting there pretty quick actually here. So not too bad. Again, all you need is for this shiny that's here, you need this to be all the way around the edge. That's it. You don't have to worry about back in here. You don't need to flatten from here down. I see that a lot on the internet. Guys have got it flattened all the way up to the hole. You're killing yourself for no reason and wasting iron for no reason. Put a little bit more water on here to kind of, because there's metal shavings down inside of there, which will prevent you from cutting. And you will get a hell of a workout if you do enough of these in a day. And everybody's got their own process for this. I mean, I probably shouldn't even be doing a sharpening video because there's just so much of it out there, and there's a lot of great advice. And again, going back to Paul Sellers, I was taught the same identical way that Paul was taught, which is quite interesting. I sharpen irons the same way he does. Have for years. It's always worked for me. Great advice. It's very, very, very good advice. All right, on to the medium stone here. Yeah, we're getting close to the edge, but don't grind that all the way down to the edge and then go progressively through the stones. You're killing yourself for no reason. You're going to end up basically doing the same thing anyways. So you might as well work that down as you go through the stones. As you can hear, well, you probably can't hear the sound because of the type of microphone I have, but if you could hear the sound on the microphone, the cutting sound changes drastically when you go from stone to stone. Almost there. It's almost perfectly across that bottom edge there. This iron was actually in better shape than I thought it was. And again, that crown or that recessed area when you first put the iron down, it looks like it's a big deal, right? It looks like it's really bad. It's really deep. You could literally be a half a thousandth and it would look like that. So in this case, this iron was already relatively flat. I find that on Sargent irons, I have to do the least amount of work. Stanley's, I have to do the most. Miller's Falls are somewhere in the middle there as far as being flat to start with. And this is virtually all the way across. I can move on to the next stone now. You can see there's still a little bit of a V right in here. That little bit of a V is not going to bother anything. You just need the iron to be flat down at the cutting edge. So it's time to move on to the next stone. We're almost there. The nice part is I was expecting this part of the video to take 20 minutes or 30 minutes. It's actually going quite well. And again, the later Miller's Falls tend to be not flat. And again, that's why I said these later Miller's Falls, these Type 4s can be good users, but a lot of times you have to put in the elbow grease to get the plane right to get a good user. So, and this is already proving it's doing pretty good already. All right, so the stropping part of this video, I'm going to do off camera. I'm going to do it when everything's all said and done. I'm just going to go through the actual sharpening process. Everybody knows how to use a strop, and I don't want to bore you to death watching me strop an iron. All right, that is, friends, all the way across. It's good to go. It's all the way across the bottom there. Now we just have to get down to a finer stone so that when we go to strop it, you don't have to work so hard. At this point, I'll go ahead and take care of this bevel. Now, mind you, there's a nick in the corner right here. All right, which won't really matter too much because I'm gonna roll the edges a little bit on it's a jack plane. So now on this, go up until you feel that bevel. I'm trying to throw a burr back up over on the back side. So it's okay if I'm pushing into it. And for those of you out there that think that there's a jig is absolutely necessary, I can get an edge that will make glass with my hands a lot faster than it would take you guys to set up a jig usually. Not that a jig's a bad thing. Jigs are great, especially the Veritas. They're great. They are very specific. They do get you back to work relatively quickly. If you preset your iron setup jigs and all that stuff, you can really get in there pretty quick. The thing is, I just like it this way. It's just faster for me. When I need to touch up an iron, it's sweep, 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 strop, 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 stick it back in the plane, go to work. It's a much faster process for me. Now, another thing I like to do typically is I'll skew the iron just a little bit. I can see a little better usually, and just kind of drag it in. The trick with this, though, is feeling and looking to see, make sure you're not deeper on one side than the other. I could do this with a coarse stone a lot faster, but it's not really necessary. And again, the coarser the stone you start with, the more work you have to put in to get the scratches out. You can get away with a fine stone and do the same work. Why not do that? And I'm actually almost through that nick. And again, guys, I can't emphasize enough. Diamond stones are fine. This guy's out here with these 8 million micron stones and everything else. As a professional woodworker, time is of the essence. If I have to flatten a stone, pull out a ruler, flatten another stone, pull out a ruler, do this and that and the other, it's just too much work. Time is money. It's very important to understand that. And for the guy right now that's going, what angle are you grinding at? Don't know. Don't care. I'm grinding at an angle that'll create a sharp edge that will provide a good plane. And you feel that after a while, you get used to knowing with your hands what the appropriate angle is. And yes, geometry-wise, it's probably better to have a specific angle for the shaving. But at the end of the day, this is a user jack plane. I'm not smoothing Bubinga burl. I'm not doing anything like that with it. It's literally to bulk remove material. That's it. That's this plane's job. I'm actually right there almost. The old expression of KISS, keep it simple, stupid, definitely applies to woodworking, guys. It really does. It applies to woodworking. That's gold. A little more water on the back of it, or a little bit more water on this. Run the back real quick. Knock that burr off, and you can actually see the burr starting to form right here. There is a burr there that's ready to be knocked off of there. Take a nice light swipe. Now I'm barely pressing down on this stone at this point. I'm trying to get that wire to fall off of there, right? Which it will do just that here in a second. And when I run it through here, the burr is still there. It's actually rolled back forward. I'll take this, rest it, little swipe, little light push with it, burr's gone. Knock the burr off. This is actually pretty darn sharp as it sits right now. And this is not on the finest stone. Put this out of the way. Make sure that when you're using diamond stones in water, you got to make absolute sure they are dry as a bone when you're done using them. Very important. Just kind of go over the back, Go lightly. Use the full width of the stone. I just kind of work my way back and forth. You guys are probably wondering why the stones are kind of staying still. They're staying still because the factory actually puts little rubber feet on them. They still slide around sometimes, as you could see earlier, but for the most part, this is fine. You see how the stone tried to pick up when I tried to pick this up? That's called ringing. It's basically ringing to the stone. That means it's flat. It's very flat. I go, same thing here. Run up to this edge. Kind of swipe it a little bit. I'm not pressing very hard at all, guys. Just lightly pressing on it. And again, I've done this a long time, so I'm comfortable with my hands. I kind of know where I'm at. I don't really need a guide or anything. If you need a guide, by all means, use a guide. And again, you're barely pressing down. You don't want to create a big, massive burr you got to remove. Just barely press down on it. You're effectively kind of like abrading it to polish almost. All right, that iron is now ready for me to take it and drop it. The iron's good to go. It's that simple, really. No jig required. All right, so that's good. That's done. All right, we're going to move on to making the top of the iron look a little bit more presentable. Then we'll move on to the body of the plane. Okay, we're back with the iron here. Normally, this stuff is not allowed anywhere near one of my planes. It's sandpaper. 220 grit sandpaper is not normally allowed near my planes. On a user hand plane, it doesn't really matter. I mean, let's be honest, it's not collectible. It's not like it's going to drive the value up or down. You want to make it look decent for the shop, and you want it to work well, right? That's the goal with a user plane. I'm going to take a little bit of this sandpaper. I'm not going to press very hard. I'm just going to kind of go over the very top edge of the iron here, right? Always go with the correct direction of the grain. Always with the direction of grain here, right? And it's okay if your sandpaper falls over the edge a little bit, because again, we're trying to soften that edge anyways, right? Just like we did earlier with the stone. Just going to kind of go over it lightly. Just kind of brighten it up so it'll look a little better. Not really a requirement, but it does make it look a little nicer on the shelf. And you're going with the coarseness of the iron, with the coarseness of the grain. All right? Now I'm going to touch this up again later on when I'm moving on to the oiling part. So no worries about it being perfect. I like my Miller's Falls, so I like seeing my logos. All right, that's good. That just kind of dresses it up a little bit. It's not a big deal there. It just kind of dresses it up enough to make it to where it's a little bit more attractive. That's all. That's there. Now I got black on my table. All right, a little bit of water. I'll wash this down later on. All right, now that's done. That's done. Let's go to the body. The body's got a little bit of enamel lifting right here. You could respray that corner if you wanted to. Just peel that enamel off, scrub that with a wire brush, and just hit it lightly. Just right there, though. You don't need to spray the whole plane. Look at the Japanning on this plane. The Japanning is actually pretty damn good on here. It really is. So if you want to fix that one little spot, you can do touch-up paint. You can do a little spritz of enamel. This is an enamel plane to start with, but it's not really necessary. So don't worry about it. All right. So let's address this first. All right. As you can see here, it cleaned up pretty good, right? Technically, I could just put a little bit of wax on here and go to town. You don't need to go any further than this. It's going to get black anyways from having your handprints on there, the oils and waxes you put on there to protect the plane later on. Same thing with the sole, right? It's in pretty good shape. It looks pretty good as it sits. I mean, you don't really need to go crazy on it. You can, and I'm going to brighten it up just a little bit. Again, going back to the sandpaper, just a light touch with the sandpaper. Just lightly going over it. You're not going to go nuts with it. You're just going to lightly go over it, right? Going with the direction of the grind. And by the way, a number 5 size or a jack plane is not a shooting plane. So for the guys that are sitting down right now going, oh my gosh, he's knocking it out of square. It's not going to work on my shooting board. A number 6 is a good shooter. Or a Stanley number 9 is a good shooter, right? You don't need to make a number 5 square, or a 14 in this case, square, for it to work good as a shooting plane. You really don't need to. Not necessary. And take this stuff right here, saw it earlier. Take it and just kind of go over it. At this point it's dry. Just kind of wipe it down a little bit, smooth it out, clean it up. That cheek is now attractive enough for use, attractive enough to look in the shop, right? The same thing here. Just kind of go over with sandpaper. Now with the sole, you're going to want to go lighter with it, right? Because you don't want to knock the sole out. And again, you're not going to go out that far. It's just 220 grit sandpaper. I don't have 80 going on here. And all I'm doing is just lightly cleaning up the surface to make it a little smoother. Listen, guys, you don't need 600 grit sandpaper. Be careful around the mouth, by the way. You don't need 600 grit sandpaper to make this thing slide smooth. You need wax or oil. As a matter of fact, if the surface is a little rougher, it'll hold the wax a little better. So I don't ever go to 600 grit. I just don't. 220, clean it up a little bit, 220, that's it. You want to send it out, have it surface ground to 10 microns or 10,000 microns, whatever you want to do, that's up to you. That's perfectly fine. But it's just not necessary, especially on a jack plane. Now again, go back over it. Just kind of smooth out the surface a little bit. Be careful around the mouth. That's good to go. Again, just making a user, not making a showpiece. You're not remanufacturing the plane. You're just making a user. Knock some of that darkness down just so it looks a little better. That's all. And the cool thing is, it'll still look old. You get in here and make it like a mirror and whatnot, it doesn't look old anymore. It looks weird. I mean, I'm sure there's guys out there that love it, right? Love the mirror look on the sides. Miller's Falls did make a 209. The number 209. They chrome plated the sole, the cheeks, and everything else on that plane. And it is absolutely beautiful. I love that plane. Absolutely sexy as hell. Even with the plastic on it. I really like it a lot. But is it necessary to do that on a standard jack plane? It's not. It's just not something that's required. Okay. Now, again, going back over this just real quick. Kind of what I did on the other sides over there. And this is just a fine Scotch-Brite. That's all it is. All right, that's good to go. That thing will run smooth now. And somehow I've still got dampness in here. Don't want dampness settling anywhere on this plane at all. So now the next step, to prevent fingerprints and all that stuff, I'm going to take a piece of paper towel. Take a piece of paper towel and put a little oil on the sole and the cheeks. Just like before. A little bit there. Just to protect the plane while we're working on it, right? You don't want any moisture getting to it and making little spots we have to deal with later on. That's just not fun. Again, just kind of going over the whole thing. Not going crazy here. Just put a little oil on the surface if you feel like it's dry, which there it was getting a little dry. Again, cast iron does absorb oil. Again, I might be wrong, but it absorbs oil. That's what I've observed. All right. Again, look for watermarks at this point. You don't want water sitting anywhere on the plane. All right. As with the live video, we were talking about the tuning process here. This needing to be tuned. This is definitely no exception to the rule. This one, since it's a Type 4, it's going to be pretty rough. So take a quick break, come back, and we'll tune the frog seat itself and the frog. Okay, so I ran off and grabbed a straight edge. It's a starrett square. Works really good for the sole, just to check it, see how flat it is. It's probably flat enough to do what a jack plane does, but for the most part, we're going to check it anyways, just to see what's going on with it. All right, so as with the other video, you want to go through here first, just kind of clean up all the crud and crap that's in here, just to make it easier to figure out what's going on with the machine work. And as to what's typical with Miller's Falls, later Miller's Falls, and this is where I say some will be good, some of them won't. You're going to find that the machining's pretty rough on the frog seats for these guys. So just kind of going back and forth across it here, just kind of smoothing it out a little bit. Just so that there's something that can be read on here. And if you look, as with the plane I had the other day, you'll see that there is a little shiny there, and it's got a raise up right there in the edge. We'll fix that in a second. All right, do that. Paint on a little permanent marker here, just so we can see what's going on. Now you're going to check the bottom of the frog itself. These are usually not the offenders, by the way. It's usually the frog seats that are a problem. The frogs are usually okay for the most part, right? I'm just going to kind of go lay the file flat across here and just kind of scrub it off, just so it's a nice smooth mating surface. And what I'm looking for too is I'm looking to see if maybe a spot in the middle is really high or low. As you can see here, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. And again, this doesn't have to be surface ground to this for it to work properly. It does not need to be surface ground to it. If you get some of the records were actually surface ground. They surface ground the bottom of the frog, the frog feet, and the frog seat itself. They actually surface ground that stuff, which is insane, but they did do it. All right, take your frog. Let me turn it here where you can see. Take your frog, set it roughly where you're going to need it to be when you actually set the plane up, and feel for it. And you see it's actually not rocking already as it sits. So technically you can bolt this thing back together and be good. But knowing that the landing itself is not perfectly flat, I'm not comfortable with that. So I'm going to go across it anyways, just because it just makes sense to do that, right? Just run the frog back and forth just a little bit, and you'll be able to see shiny right inside of there. Turn it so you can see it there. There's a little bit of shiny right there. That is basically from where the bottom of the frog is rubbing the frog seat. It's taking the Sharpie off. So I'm going to go there, just kind of clean that out of there a little bit, right? Don't want to go nuts. It's not necessary. Again, it's a user plane. The precision is not required for a user plane on a 5 size or a jack plane. It's just not required. Now, a smoother's a different story. Pay very close attention. Smoothers need to be perfectly held together because you want a nice smooth cut. Nice smooth cut is from non-vibration, removing all the harmonics you can, that kind of thing. So jack plane, it's a rough tool. It's not designed to be a really super fine tool. Eventually, one of these times, I'll sit down and blueprint out on video. I'll blueprint out a smoother to the degree you really want to go to with a smoother. Again, let this dry a little bit. The frog back on there. It may rock a little bit at this point because I removed some material off the other side as well to clean it up. And there's zero rock here. I mean, this is flat. Flat enough for a jack plane. Press on both sides. Tapping. There's no rocking. So that is really, honestly, again, why do I love Miller's Falls? That's why. Stuff's pretty much ready to go. I mean, I did what? 2 minutes worth of work? 4 minutes worth of work. I'm looking at the camera now. 4 minutes worth of work, and it's good to go there. So that's done. Now, these edges here. Just take, run this guy. Lightly on those edges, because they do tend to be pretty sharp. especially if you're right-handed, you want to especially pay attention to the left cheek up by the knob and to the right cheek down by the toe. That's the part that's going to rub on your hand and get those nasty little blisters you get when you're playing for hours and hours and hours on end, which I've done. And it is kind of miserable on occasion. All right, that's that. Feels kind of nice and smooth. This is a sharp edge right here now. This is a pretty sharp edge. Again, go through here with a file. Long strokes, guys. Long strokes. Change your angle a little bit. Just soften that up a little bit. You don't have to go crazy. If you look at actually some of the earlier Stanleys, they did this from the factory, and they were really, really, really nice. You even get it on some of the World War II Stanleys, where they kind of ease that edge over. Really nice of them. Not all of them are like that. I tend to like to look for that for a user plane, where it was done by the factory, so you don't have to go through and do this kind of thing to it. Again, long strokes. This is a pretty fresh file, so it's cutting really nice. It's okay if you use a worn file. It's not going to hurt anything. Just kind of clean it up a little bit, right? Nice soft edge. Same thing on the toe. You don't want that digging into your workpiece when you're going, especially if you're going real hard and heavy at it. You don't want that digging in. Just kind of ease it as you go. You don't have to go nuts on it, guys. Just make it nice and smooth along those edges. That's it. Same thing with the heel. Do the same thing there. Just kind of go across it. Smooth it out. On a smoother, you would pay more attention to this. On a jack, you just don't want to catch it on anything, right? Simple, simple, simple stuff. Fresh piece of sandpaper. Go over it. Same thing on the sides here. Just ease that edge over, make it nice and smooth. Same thing here. That's good there. This isn't imperative for it to be perfect. You don't have to remachine it. It's just simple, make it work, right, guys? Just simple, simple, simple. Keep it as simple as possible. Again, it's going to the bench. That's it. It's probably going to get dusty. It's probably going to get dirty. You don't take a Ferrari to a mud pit. And that's what a jack is designed for, to go to the mud pit. And these edges are still a little bit harder than I would like. So I'm going to go through with this. The stone wasn't quite aggressive enough. And again, it's all about comfort on your hand, especially for extended use. If you guys are unplugged, completely unplugged, you want to do this. You're not going for looks. I know I keep saying that over and over and over, but it's not about the looks. It's about the performance of the plane. Again, pay attention to that front left cheek, because your hand is going to be like this. I typically use the plane like this, which is why a lot of times you'll see that the Japanning or enamel's messed up here. A lot of guys will run the plane with their thumb down here below the knob. And that's one of the things that I do. And I actually was just talking with my nephew Nicholas a few minutes ago. We were talking about possibly giving this plane away at some point to a viewer. We're new to YouTube. It'd be kind of nice, I think, to do a giveaway. You guys leave a comment. Let me know what you think. What format? What format would you like me to give it away in? It's just one of the planes I picked up. It came out of a box slide. I don't have a whole ton of money into it. And it might be a nice gesture for you guys. So again, leave a comment and let me know how you'd like me to give it away. Something fun. I like fun. Fun's always better. All right, now We're going to get into a little bit of a debatable statement here, and there will be people leaving comments, and that's perfectly fine. I'd love to hear your opinion. I don't normally, on a Miller's Falls, screw with this. The reason I don't is because of the design of this lever cap. This lever cap, if this is a little twisted, will pick up the twist. It'll actually adapt the iron, for the most part, to the frog face. Now, if it's out a quarter of an inch here and a quarter of an inch there, and it's up a quarter and a quarter here, it ain't gonna go for that. But if it's out by, 20 thousandths, 10 thousandths, 15 thousandths, it's actually gonna pick up the difference. I've never found any evidence to state otherwise. It's actually quite amazing how it works. If you check it now, going across it, there is a little bit of rock. It's right there to the center, which is actually okay, because if you think about the way the iron is setting in there, the iron's setting in open to it. And if I look at it right now, I don't know if the camera can pick it up. I'll try. There's no gap anyways. There and there. There's no gap anyways as it sits. So there's no need to screw with this frog face if you don't need to. It's a user. If it's not right, we fix it. In this case, the way this is designed to go with this, you don't need to really worry about it. And again, as they say, opinions and, and the old saying, we won't go through there, but so going back to the, again, it's debatable topic, right? Miller's Falls makes an absolutely spectacular plane, in my opinion. It's my opinion, and everybody's got one. I'm gonna wipe the plane down again real quick, just because I've been handling it. There's been dust all over it and whatnot. So, as I showed in the previous video, I do like to wipe everything down with a little bit of oil. This does have some rust developing underneath the enamel here. So at some point this is going to have to be resprayed. But for right now, for the next 25, 30 years, you're probably okay if you take care of it. It doesn't really matter much. There. I'm going to put a little bit of oil down in here where that spot is. It's actually, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and lift up that enamel that's there, because it's going to come up anyways. And it's just a hotbed for rust to develop if it doesn't get lifted up there. So I'm going to coat this with oil. Again, going to preserve the thing. Don't let it rust any more than it already has there in that corner. All right, that's good to go. This is ready to rock and roll. Let's apply some oil on the other stuff, and we'll go ahead and stick it back together. I mean, this technically, as it sits right now, would make a pretty good shaving. And that's before that's stropped. I'll strop that later on off camera. There's no point in going over it on here. Everybody knows what a strop looks like and whatnot. So apply some oil on here. And again, if you guys ever have a question on one of these videos, you can reach out to me via email at oldhandtool@gmail.com. You can reach out to me on the website at oldhandtool.com. There's a contact section there. Feel free to reach out to me there. I don't have a problem answering questions. I'm pretty easygoing, slightly opinionated, as you could probably tell so far, but I'll help you out any way I can. This is what I do, guys. So don't feel like you're putting me out by asking me a tool question. I'm a tool guy. Actually, some guys call me a tool. That one's for you, Casey. Casey Benton. Love the guy to death. Calls me a tool at least twice a day. If he doesn't, I feel left out. Love some good sense of humor whenever I can get it. I'm probably causing you guys to want to go take a nap right now. Watching me oil parts has got to be a blast. And again, you don't have to put a ton of oil on here, guys. You really don't. Not necessary, not needed. And we'll clean up the tote knob here in just a minute before we put everything back together. I didn't forget about that. Again, make sure you put a lot of oil on the chip breaker retainer screw here. It's something that gets frozen up frequently, and guys forget about it. They have it wet and they just don't think about it. And it's not a good thing. I've had them freeze up on me, and it's really annoying. It looks like my oil has been with me for like 4 or 5 months. It's looking like it's running a little bit low. Still some in there, but running a little bit low. Take and oil your iron. Now I've already got this edge pretty sharp, so I don't want to go this way. I want to go away from me. Just get a little bit of oil on there. Oil that chip breaker. Just get a nice thin coat of oil on there. You can't hurt it by oiling it. You really can't. You know, a lot of oil. Anything metal, you're going to want to put oil on it. Oil's your friend here. You want to keep this thing lasting as long as possible, right? And I forgot to put oil on here. A little oil in there. Run a little oil in there. Going the wrong direction on that usually causes problems. Again, you want this thing to run pretty fast. All right? That's on there. Let's get this put back together. All right, I'm going to toss this thing back together, and I'll come back and share a couple thoughts with you. And we'll check the sole of this thing while we're at it at that point, once everything's back together. By the way, you don't need to put the frog in to flatten the sole. Just so you know, it's not required. I'm just going to check it. Again, I'm not flattening the sole unless it's jack plane, unless it's really far out. And I'll do that off camera. You guys have seen somebody flatten the sole online a million times. I'm sure you don't need me to give you the instruction on how to do that. I can just about guarantee you've seen it enough to not want to see it again. So we'll be back in a few minutes after I got this thing put back together. Okay, guys, got the plane kind of put back together, at least the frog and all that stuff. I forgot I was going to show you guys how to clean up the tote and the knob on here, which same process as the previous video. But a little dab will do you. Rub it in, rub it around there. Kind of wipe everything down. These are really pretty, these Goncalo owls. They are really pretty, totes and knobs. They're not rosewood. I just want to make that very, very clear. For some reason lately, there's a lot of guys on eBay that are saying that Goncalo owls is rosewood. Technically, it's in the family, but it's not rosewood. It's in the same family, but it's Goncalo owls. And again, I'm just using some of the Howards just to kind of clean it up. It's a little slick right now. Let it sit. There's not really any way for it to soak in because there is a lot of original finish on here. But let it soak in the best it can, I guess, with what's there. Just trying to brighten it up a little bit, clean it up a little bit, and it'll make it a little bit softer in the hands when you go to use it, and it smells nice. I guess it's a decent side effect, right? Nice smells are not bad. When you got kids, nice smells are pretty rare, so having your plain smell nice is good. Okay, all right, that's good to go. Stick that back together. Drop a little oil down inside of these two and put some oil on those, which hadn't been done yet. And again, be liberal with the oil here, guys. Oil's cheap. And you don't want these freezing on you later, and they will absolutely do that. Kind of like the brass has on the post. Turn that in there till you feel it rest. Set it down in there and put it down. Screw it down in there. One thing you got to be careful with Miller's Falls knobs, especially Miller's Falls knobs, is the split. You'll split the knob. You crank it down too much. You don't want to do that. It's just not a good idea. What I like to do for these, put this in until it engages with it, just till I can see it move a little bit. Before I crank that down, I'll put the toe screw in to get it started. If not, it's a mother to get it lined up. Crank that down. Now I'll finish this one off. And again, don't over crank these either. You want to get them nice and tight so the tote doesn't wobble on you. But that's all you really want to do. Okay. Now, iron's been... Be careful putting the iron back in. You just went through all that aggravation. Just be careful putting it back in there. You don't want to nick up the edge. You just went through all that trouble to start with. With these, crank it till it drops. And usually that's it. So a little. That's firm. That's all you need, guys. That's really all you need. Just firm. You want it to be firm. So that's all you really need for that. Oily rag. Just kind of wipe everything back down again, just to protect it. That's it. I mean, you can't really go wrong with the oil on anything that's cast iron, right? So the tote knob's clean. The iron's been honed. It still needs to be stropped, which we'll handle that later. Now we'll go ahead and check and see the iron's retracted. If you can see inside of there, the iron's been retracted. Nothing's going to damage it. I'm going to check here. And I'm making contact all the way across at the mouth, right near the toe, and back near the heel. That plane is, for all intents and purposes, is pretty well flat. It's flat across there. It's flat across there. There's no twist. This plane is actually already flat, guys. And you saw what I did to it. All I did was pretty much scratch it down, or scrape it down with a razor blade. Sand it up a little bit to clean it up a little bit, and it's flat. So all this thing needs at this point is to be stropped, and it's ready to go to work. If you can see here, it's pretty. This is as far as you really need to go. You can make it shiny if you want. I mean, it's your plane. Do whatever you want with it. It's unnecessary. This plane will age well now because it's nice and oiled. There is a little bit of darkness there, but it's just nice, appealing to the eyes darkness. Just real simple, easy, no big deal. Looks nice. This plane looks really nice. The tote turned out beautiful. The knob turned out beautiful. This plane, to me, being a Miller's Falls guy, is absolutely beautiful. It's a great user condition plane. That's it. I mean, that's really all you can ask for a plane you're going to take to the bench. I could take this plane right now, drop the iron down in it, and take some shavings with it. I won't get the same shavings I would if I honed it or if I stropped it, but I'd still get a pretty good shaving out of it. Now, check here. The iron's sitting dead flat against the frog, and the iron's sitting dead flat against the frog. This is good. This is tuned. This is cleaned. This is ready to go to somebody's home once it's been strapped and used. That's it. This is all you need. It's really simple. So that's it. That's a user plane. That's how I handle a user plane. Now, I do have guys that want me to blueprint the frog. I do have guys that want me to blueprint the sole, to literally make that sole dead flat everywhere, which involves scraping. It involves grinding. It involves a lot of work that's just not necessary. These things weren't completely dead micron flat from the factory. None of them. I think Sergeant is the closest I found to dead flat from the factory, with the grind mark still there, shockingly enough. But this is it. It's good to go. And actually, just for giggles, let's check and see if the sole is square to the cheeks. It probably won't be. Normally isn't on a 5. I typically find them square on a 6. That's out at the top of the cheek by maybe 5 thousandths, 8 thousandths. And same there. So the cheek leans in just a taste. If I wanted to square this up, I'd have to remove a little bit of meat from the bottom down here, and it would be dead square. So it's pretty darn close. And to be honest with you, if you did decide to use this as a shooting plane, it's real simple. Use your lateral, and it would still work fine. Again, not a heavy enough plane to use a lateral, or to shoot with it. It's just not heavy enough. It's a pretty heavy plane. Don't get me wrong. These later Miller's Falls are actually cast thicker. It's kind of like the World War II era Stanleys. I love those things. They don't have a frog adjustment screw, but I'll tell you what, those suckers are heavy. It's like buying a 4.5 or 5.5 H, which is a lot more money. If you look on the website, I got one there. It's just so much more money than buying a regular 4.5 or 5.5. So what you would do is literally buy a World War II version, put a Sweetheart iron in it, or a V logo iron in it, or something like that. It was the best irons from Stanley, in my opinion, what came from that period, and you're good to go. So a little bit more tune work required, but still, how hard was it? You know what I mean? Not that difficult. Not rocket science. So for now, gonna go ahead and get out of here. You guys, let me know what videos you want to see. What do you want to know? It could be tool dealer related. It could be tool related. It could be you want to see something rare from the website. You want me to do a feature on it. You want me to show you how to use a tool, a specific tool? No problem. So, and I come to this trade from a woodworking background. I'm a furniture maker, furniture designer. That's where I started. So I've used these tools. I love using these tools. That's part of my passion for it. I'm not a typical dealer. It's not just about making cash on my end. I do sell the tools. It is my livelihood. But I do it because I love it. I love the tools. I love their function. And I love how they work. So anyways, guys, have a great day. And look forward to the next video. Of course, subscribe. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. You can go to the website if you have any questions about the stuff that's on there. Please, by all means, reach out to me. Take care.